When I walked into the courtroom alone, my mom scoffed, my dad rolled their eyes, and the judge, he leaned forward like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Stick with me. I stood there holding a thin folder against my chest, my hands shaking but my face calm. I was 18 years old, standing in a courtroom by myself. No lawyer beside me. No family sitting behind me for support. Just rows of strangers, whispers filling the room, and my parents sitting behind the defense table like this was all some kind of joke. My mom didn't even try to hide her smirk. My dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, already bored. They truly believed I didn't belong there. That I would embarrass myself. That I would fail. The judge looked down at me, then at the empty chair where my lawyer should have been. He asked if I understood what I was doing. I nodded. My voice didn't shake when I said yes. That seemed to surprise him. Everything froze in that moment, and my mind went back 6 months. Back then, my life was quiet and small. I lived in rural Indiana, finishing my senior year, working 2 jobs, saving every dollar I could. My parents ran a local construction company, and everyone in town respected them. My older brother Tanner was their pride. The golden child. He never did wrong. I was just too sensitive, according to them. One night, while looking for a bank statement, I noticed something was missing. My college fund. The account I had been adding money to since I was 15. It was empty. Gone. When I asked my parents, they brushed it off. They said the market crashed. That I wouldn't understand. But something felt wrong. I requested records myself. That's when I saw it. The money hadn't disappeared. It had been taken out and moved into a private account under Tanner's name. When I confronted them, they acted offended. Hurt. Angry that I would even question them. My dad told me I was imagining things. My mom said I was ungrateful. A week later, I was fired from my part-time job at the diner without warning. No explanation. Just told not to come back. Soon after, people stopped talking to me the same way. Whispers followed me. Meanwhile, Tanner rolled into town driving a brand new truck. It felt like I was being erased piece by piece. My money, my job, my reputation, and no one believed me. That was the moment I stopped asking for the truth and started looking for it myself. I couldn't sleep after seeing the account balance at 0. My chest felt tight, like all the air had been taken out of me. The next morning, I logged into the bank website again, hoping I had made a mistake. But the numbers didn't change. Years of saving gone. I went to the bank after school and asked for printed records. The woman at the desk gave me a strange look, but handed them over. I sat in my car and read every line slowly. That's when I saw it clearly. The money wasn't lost. It was withdrawn in large chunks and transferred into another account. A private account. The name on it made my hands shake. Tanner. I went home and waited until both my parents were in the kitchen. I laid the papers on the table and asked them to explain. My mom barely glanced at them. She sighed like I was bothering her. My dad didn't even sit down. They said I was being dramatic. That families share money. That Tanner needed help more than I did. My mom told me I should be proud my brother was finally doing something with his life. When I said that money was for college, money I worked for, my dad snapped. He said I was selfish and ungrateful. He said I owed them everything. That night, Tanner pulled into the driveway in a shiny new truck. It still had the dealer plates on it. He revved the engine like he wanted everyone to notice. When he saw me watching, he smiled and tossed me the keys for a second, like it was a joke. I didn't touch them. Over the next few weeks, his life suddenly looked perfect. New clothes. New phone. Nights out. Meanwhile, my parents started acting like the college fund never existed. Anytime I brought it up, they changed the subject or accused me of causing problems in the family. Something in me shifted. I stopped arguing. I stopped crying in front of them. Instead, I started paying attention. I took photos of documents when no one was around. I copied bank statements and transfer records. I wrote down dates, amounts, and names in a notebook I kept hidden under my mattress. I saved emails and messages that felt off. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. At dinner, I stayed quiet while they talked about Tanner's future. I nodded when they told me to figure things out on my own. Inside, I felt calm for the first time. They thought I had given up. They thought I was weak and confused. But every night, I added another piece to the truth. Slowly, carefully. I wasn't digging for answers anymore. I was building proof. Getting fired didn't feel random. It felt planned. I had worked at the diner for almost 2 years. I never missed a shift. I covered for others. Customers liked me. So when my boss told me not to come back, I knew something was wrong. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He just said it was for the best and walked away. I stood outside the diner for a long time, staring at the door. My paycheck was already late. I needed that job. On the walk home, the same thought kept repeating in my head. This wasn't an accident. Later that night, I overheard my mom on the phone in the living room. She lowered her voice when she heard me moving. That made my stomach drop. I quietly stepped back and listened from the hallway. She said my name. I went to my room and grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking as I hit record. I walked closer, pretending to grab a glass of water. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. My mom was talking to the diner owner. She laughed softly and said I was going through a phase. She told him I had been acting strange lately. Then she said the words that changed everything. She's mentally unstable, my mom said. I'm worried she might steal if she feels cornered. I just wanted to warn you. I felt sick. The call ended, and I went back to my room without saying a word. I sat on my bed and played the recording again and again, just to be sure I heard it right. My own mother had destroyed my job. Not because I did anything wrong, but because she wanted to control the story. The next day, rumors spread fast. People looked at me differently. Friends stopped texting. One girl asked if I was okay, in a way that didn't feel kind. I realized my parents weren't just taking my money. They were tearing down my name. That night at dinner, my mom smiled at me like nothing happened. She asked if I had found a new job yet. My dad said maybe this was a lesson for me. Tanner laughed and told me to relax. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Inside, something hard settled in my chest. This wasn't about family anymore. This wasn't about misunderstanding or mistakes. They were actively trying to ruin me, quietly and carefully, while pretending they were protecting everyone else. I locked my door that night and backed up the recording in 3 different places. I labeled the file with the date and time. I wrote down everything I remembered in my notebook. That was the moment I stopped hoping they would do the right thing. That was the moment I realized this was war. I waited until the house was asleep. My parents' construction office was attached to the garage. Dad always locked it and told me not to touch anything inside. That night, I took the spare key from the junk drawer where he never looked. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure someone would hear it. The office smelled like dust and oil. I turned on the desk lamp and froze for a second, listening. Nothing. I started opening drawers slowly, careful not to make noise. Most of them held boring things, receipts, pens, old contracts. Then I saw the locked drawer. I knew I shouldn't open it. That thought barely lasted a second. I used the small key on Dad's keychain. It clicked open. My hands started shaking as soon as I looked inside. There were stacks of papers neatly organized. Invoices that didn't match the company logo. Dates that didn't line up. I pulled one out and read it carefully. The numbers were wrong. The company names were real, but the addresses weren't. Then I saw my name. Not written. Signed. My signature was at the bottom of a contract I had never seen before. It looked like my handwriting, but it wasn't mine. Someone had practiced it. I flipped through more pages. My name was everywhere, on agreements, payment approvals, and expense reports. I felt dizzy. There were tax forms too. Altered ones. Amounts scratched out and rewritten. Income shifted around. Losses claimed where there were none. And always, my name connected to the final approval. They weren't just stealing money. They were building a trail that led straight to me. I sat on the floor and tried to breathe. Everything suddenly made sense. The rumors. The way my parents kept calling me unstable. Why my dad told me I didn't need to worry about adult things. They were preparing a story. One where I was the confused daughter who messed up the books. I took photos of everything. Every page. Every signature. I made sure the dates and file names were clear. I didn't rush. I forced myself to stay calm, even though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I put the papers back exactly where I found them and locked the drawer again, I felt different. Heavier. Older. I went to my room and backed up the photos. Then I sat on my bed in the dark. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. They were setting me up to take the fall for fraud. And if I hadn't found that drawer, I would have never seen it coming. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just stared at the wall and planned my next move. The next week, I took everything I had and walked into a lawyer's office. My folder was thick with copies, photos, bank records, and notes. I had practiced what I would say the whole bus ride there. I told myself that once someone with real authority saw the proof, everything would change. The lawyer barely looked at me. He flipped through a few pages, leaned back in his chair, and smiled in a way that felt wrong. He asked how old I was. When I said 18, he let out a small laugh. Not loud, just enough to sting. He said family matters like this usually work themselves out. He said going against my parents would only make things worse. Then he asked who my father was. When I told him, his expression changed. He closed the folder and slid it back across the desk. He said he couldn't help me. I went to 2 more offices after that. One receptionist told me they weren't taking new clients. Another lawyer said I should listen to my parents and stop making accusations. No one wanted to touch it. Not in this town. On my walk home, it finally clicked. My parents weren't just powerful in my house. They were powerful everywhere. They sponsored events. They donated money. They hired people. And no one wanted to be on the wrong side of the Breyers. I sat on a bench and cried for the first time in weeks. Not loud, just quiet tears that wouldn't stop. I felt small, trapped, like I had run into a wall from every direction. That night, my dad asked where I had been. I said I was studying. He nodded, like he already knew I wouldn't get far. That's when something in me hardened. If no one would stand up for me, I would do it myself. I started going to the library after school. I read books about civil law and fraud cases. I learned how to file motions, how evidence works, and how to speak in court without sounding unsure. I watched real hearings online and took notes on how people presented their cases. I organized everything I had. I labeled files, sorted timelines, and made copies of copies. I practiced explaining my story out loud until it sounded clear and calm. I stopped hoping for help. I stopped asking for permission. Every night, while my parents slept peacefully down the hall, I sat at my desk building my case. Slowly, carefully, legally. They thought I was alone. They didn't realize I was preparing to take them to court, and I was learning how to do it myself. The dinner invitation came out of nowhere. My mom knocked on my door one afternoon and smiled like everything was normal. She said they wanted to have a family dinner and clear the air. She said we had all been stressed and needed to talk things over like adults. I knew it wasn't real kindness, but I went anyway. The table was set nicer than usual. My mom cooked my favorite food. My dad acted calm, almost gentle. Tanner sat across from me, quiet for once, his phone resting face down on the table. I noticed it right away. As soon as we sat down, my mom started talking about forgiveness. She said families shouldn't fight. She said I had hurt them by accusing them of things. My dad nodded along, saying he wanted peace in the house. Tanner stayed silent, watching me closely. I kept my voice steady. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my tone. I answered slowly, choosing my words with care. Inside, my heart was racing. Then my dad leaned forward. His voice dropped. He said I needed to let this go. That if I kept pushing, I would regret it. My mom said people were starting to talk, and it wasn't good for the family's reputation. That's when Tanner's phone lit up. I saw the red recording dot on the screen. He was recording me. He wanted proof. He wanted me to snap so they could say I was unstable. That everything was in my head. I felt strangely calm. Earlier that day, I had slipped my own phone into my pocket with the recorder on. I hadn't planned to use it, but something told me I might need it. I continued speaking calmly. I said I only wanted the truth. I said I didn't understand why my money was taken. I asked simple questions and waited. That's when my dad lost patience. He slammed his hand on the table and told me if I didn't drop everything, I would be cut out for good. No help. No support. No family. He said I would regret turning my back on them. My mom stayed silent. Tanner smirked. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I just nodded and said I understood. After dinner, I went to my room and locked the door. I stopped the recording and listened to it once. Every threat. Every word. Clear and calm. They thought they had trapped me. They didn't know I had recorded the entire ambush. That night, I labeled the file carefully and backed it up. They were trying to break me. Instead, they gave me exactly what I needed. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cleaning spray. My hands were steady as I walked up to the counter, even though my heart was racing. I placed my file down in front of the court clerk. It was thick, organized, and clearly labeled. I had checked everything 3 times the night before. The clerk flipped through the pages slowly. Her eyebrows pulled together as she read the names. She looked up at me, then back down again. She leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she whispered. I nodded. She turned the file toward me and pointed to the section that listed the defendants. My mother, my father, my brother, all written in black ink, clear and final. I signed my name where she told me to. My hand didn't shake. When I handed the papers back, something heavy lifted off my chest. There was no turning back now. As I walked out of the courthouse, I could feel eyes on me. A woman I recognized from town looked away quickly. By the next morning, people were already talking. Whispers followed me at the grocery store. Someone asked my neighbor if I had lost my mind. My parents didn't say a word to me at first. Then the letters came. Official ones. Legal language. My dad's lawyer warned me I was making a huge mistake. That I would regret this. That family matters should stay private. Tanner sent me a message saying I was embarrassing everyone. He said I was ruining the family name for attention. I didn't reply. Instead, I kept preparing. I reviewed my claims again and again. Breach of trust. Embezzlement. Fraud. Every charge backed by documents, recordings, and timelines. I practiced explaining each one in simple terms, the way the judge would hear it. People in town stopped smiling at me. Some crossed the street when they saw me coming. Others stared like I was something fragile that might break. I didn't break. Each day, I reminded myself why I filed. Not out of anger. Not for revenge. But because what they did was wrong, and silence would only protect them. The night before my court date, I sat alone at my desk. I read through my opening statement one last time. I packed my folder carefully and set my alarm early. I wasn't scared anymore. They had taken my money, my job, and my name. Now I was taking back control. And no matter how loud the whispers got, I wasn't backing down. The courtroom was louder than I expected. People whispered as my parents walked in with their lawyer. My mom smiled at someone in the back row. My dad joked quietly, like this was a small inconvenience. Tanner leaned against the wall, relaxed, confident. When I stepped forward alone, I heard a soft laugh behind me. Their lawyer looked at me and asked if I planned to continue without representation. His tone was sharp, almost mocking. I said yes. My voice stayed steady. He smirked. When the judge asked me to begin, I didn't rush. I took a breath and started from the beginning. I explained the college fund. I showed the bank records. I pointed to the dates, the amounts, and the account the money was transferred into. Their lawyer interrupted, saying the documents were being misunderstood. The judge held up his hand and told him to wait. I moved on. I played the recording of my mother calling my boss. The room grew quiet as her voice filled the space. When the words mentally unstable and might steal echoed through the courtroom, my mom's smile disappeared. Their lawyer objected. The judge overruled him. Next, I presented the documents from my father's office. I explained how my signature was forged. I showed examples of my real signature and the fake ones side by side. The difference was clear. The judge leaned forward. I handed over the tax records and invoices. I explained how the numbers didn't match, how the changes always ended with my name attached. I didn't accuse. I just showed. Their lawyer stood and tried to speak over me. He said I was confused, emotional, and misinterpreting adult paperwork. He asked if I had ever been treated for mental health issues. The judge stopped him immediately. He told me to continue. I showed the recording from the family dinner. My father's voice filled the room as he threatened to cut me off if I didn't stay quiet. Tanner's quiet laugh was in the background. No one laughed now. The judge took notes. He asked careful questions. He asked for copies. He asked for timelines. My parents didn't look at me anymore. For the first time since this began, I felt something shift in the room. The judge wasn't skeptical. He wasn't bored. He was listening. When I finished, my hands were still. I stepped back from the podium and waited. The laughter was gone. In its place was silence, heavy and undeniable. And I knew then that the truth had finally reached someone who mattered. The judge asked if I had anything else to submit. I nodded and reached for my phone. I told the court this was a private recording from my home, made without interruption or editing. I explained who was speaking and when it was recorded. My parents' lawyer stood up fast and started objecting before I even pressed play. The judge raised his hand. Let her proceed. I hit the button. My parents' voices filled the courtroom. Calm. Clear. Familiar. My mother talked about spreading concerns so people would stop trusting me. She said if enough people believed I was unstable, no one would question where the money went. My father agreed. He said it would be easier if I looked unreliable. He said paperwork could be fixed later. The room went completely silent. I watched the color drain from my mother's face. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. Tanner shifted in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable. Their lawyer tried again. He said the recording was taken out of context, that it violated privacy, that it was irrelevant. The judge leaned forward and asked him to sit down. I let the recording finish. Every word played without interruption. There was no yelling, no anger, just calm planning. That made it worse. When it ended, no one spoke for a long moment. The judge removed his glasses and looked down at his notes. Then he looked directly at my parents. His voice was slow and controlled. He asked if they understood the seriousness of what had just been played. Their lawyer started to answer, but the judge stopped him again. He turned to me and asked how I obtained the recording. I explained clearly and simply. I told him where I was standing and why I started recording. I didn't add emotion. I didn't need to. The judge then did something I didn't expect. He called a brief recess. When we returned, the courtroom felt different. Tighter. He asked the court reporter to mark the audio as potential evidence beyond this civil case. He said the content raised concerns that went beyond family conflict. He asked the lawyers whether a criminal investigation should be considered. My mother's face went white. My father finally looked at me. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. The judge said he would be referring certain materials for review. He said this court could not ignore evidence that suggested intentional fraud and coordinated harm. The room buzzed with whispers again, but this time they weren't about me. I sat quietly, hands folded, staring straight ahead. They had spent months trying to make me look unstable. Now the truth was sitting in the open, and there was no way to put it back. The judge's decision came calmly, but every word felt heavy. He ruled in my favor on every count. Breach of trust, embezzlement, fraud. He said the evidence was clear and overwhelming. He ordered my parents to return every dollar taken from my college fund, plus additional penalties. Fines were issued. Records would be corrected. My name was formally cleared of any connection to fraud. Tanner didn't look confident anymore. The judge ordered the seizure of assets tied to the stolen money. That included the truck, the same one Tanner had shown off for months. I watched his face as it was listed into the record. He tried to speak, but his lawyer pulled him back into his seat. My parents finally looked small. When court ended, my mom cried quietly. My dad stood frozen, like he couldn't believe this was real. Tanner stormed out before anyone could stop him. I stayed seated until the room emptied. For the first time in months, my chest felt light. I hadn't won by yelling or begging. I won by telling the truth and proving it. A few weeks later, the restitution came through. Every dollar was returned. Along with it came something even more important. Official confirmation that I had done nothing wrong. No suspicion. No marks on my record. My future was clean again. I didn't keep all the money. While going through the evidence one last time, I found messages that led me to another girl. Younger. Quiet. Someone Tanner had been using for favors and silence. I reached out through a lawyer. She didn't want attention. She just wanted help. I gave her part of the money to start over. New place. New chance. No questions asked. On the day everything was finalized, I walked out of the courthouse alone. The same way I walked in. My dad followed me outside. He called my name. His voice cracked. He said we could still fix things. That he was sorry. That we were family. I didn't answer. I kept walking. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel the need to explain. Some people don't deserve closure. They deserve consequences. As I stepped into the sunlight, I realized something important. I didn't just win a case. I took my life back. And this time, no one could take it from me again. If this story moved you, remember this. Document everything, trust facts over fear, and know your rights, even against family. Abuse doesn't stop being abuse because it's blood. Share this story to educate others and speak up. Silence protects the wrong people.